It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to the Phil Ferguson Show. I have an extra raspy voice today, trying to get over a little cold. Nothing serious, just kind of an annoying, kind of sinusy thing. Trying to get more sleep. And yesterday, I was on the phone or on a podcast for almost 14 hours. I was talking, and that didn't help, or maybe it did, depending on your preference, because I'm at a point now where it's kind of a little gravelly and not so bad. So anyway, that's a little fun for me. Things are still going well in Florida. It is April of 2023, and this show is action-packed. Of course, they're all action-packed. Later on, we have T. Rogers, and she is going to talk to us about funerals and funeral services and how to plan in advance, how to get the funeral service that you want, or how to help someone else get the funeral service that they want. This is something that's very important to me. I've been fortunate, burdened, both maybe, of helping multiple people over the years go through that process of a funeral. And if you have ideas or things that you want, or the person you know and care for has ideas and wants things at their service, you got to talk it through. You got to make it known. You got to work with that person. And I have done a couple of services where the person was religious and I helped them get the service that they wanted. And I'm an atheist, but it's their funeral. And I consider it a sacred obligation to do what that person wants, not what I want. It's not my time, it's their time. So we're going to talk about that. It's good fun. Don't worry. I mean, it's planning for your life. It's something you need to do. I have another little segment, Investing Skeptically, two of them today. One is a little bit of an update clarification on long-term capital gains. So that's going to come up, and we're going to have some more information on that. And then another one that was inspired by a listener email about what if my brokerage firm goes broke? Is there protections like there are protections for banks? Well, there are probably actually better protections, and we're going to go over that in that segment. So if it was just me, if I'm worried about losing money, especially large amounts of money, I would feel better in a well-known, reputable brokerage firm and versus a bank. But that's just me, and I'll go over some of the reasons that I think that during that segment. And I think I discuss it in the segment because I pre-recorded it, so forgive me. But this is just another one of the examples of why you don't want to use an app on your phone to invest. It's cute if you got a couple $100 or a couple $1,000. But if you've got real money, you absolutely, positively need to understand, and you need to know how your investments are owned. Who owns them? Does the app own them and they just report the numbers to you, or do you own them? Are they in your name? Are they in a separate trust? Are they FIDC or SIPC insured? You don't know. You need to find that shit out. Otherwise, like I often say, stick to the things that I know that work. Set up an account at Vanguard or Fidelity or wherever you want. Just, I don't know, don't use an app. There's my default. Maybe I'll change my mind at some point when I find one that's good. But almost everything you can do with an app, you can do with these large brokerage and or mutual fund firms. The only thing you're missing out is the cutesy and the really fun and entertaining interface experience that you might get on your phone. But I don't want you looking at your phone that much in general, a habit I need to reduce on my own. But for your investments, you shouldn't be playing and fiddling and twiddling on a regular basis. You should have a long-term plan. You put it in place. You put it in action. And unless you've got more than $1 or $2 million, check it once a year, add money, rebalance, adjust based on how the world is working. Like, for example, we avoided long-term bonds for several years. So keep an eye on it. Don't completely forget about it, but you don't need to be in there every day fucking around with it. That's counterproductive, in my opinion. So we'll take our quick little break. We'll go into the two, that's right, not one, but two today, two different topics for the Investing Skeptically segments. And then we're going to learn about some of your options for pre-planning a funeral service and or burial and or cremation from T. Rogers. So don't go anywhere. The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. This is absolutely fantastic. As soon as I put up the last episode, I started getting emails from listeners about long-term capital gains, and they were bemused, befuddled, curious. I think I'll just go with curious. They were looking at their 1099 DIV, which they get from their brokerage firm, which could be TD Ameritrade, Schwab, Vanguard, Fidelity, wherever. And they specifically have Vanguard index funds. Good choice. And they were wondering, well, why don't I have any long-term gains? You were just talking about this on your show, Phil. What would cause this? So I wrote them a nice little email, and I thought, hey, I just went through the trouble of writing this up. I can make a little segment out of it. So in a year where the market is down, if a fund, a mutual fund, whether it's managed or an index fund, if there's something they decide to sell that creates a gain, it would be really easy to sell some shares of something else that has a long-term loss so that the net effect is zero. Now, managed funds are going to have a harder time with this, especially if they're like the one I talked about in the last show where they have 75% turnover. They could still have long-term gains that could be positive or negative. And historically, what I've experienced in the occasional down years of the stock market, what is very bothersome for people is when they look at their portfolio and it's down 5, 10, 20, 40%, but yet they have long-term capital gains that they have to pay taxes on. That can be kind of disturbing for people to think, I lost all this money, but yet I have to pay taxes on gains. So what can create that situation is that the things that were down in the mutual fund were not sold, but something that had been held for years was sold, creating capital gains. A lot of advantages come from Vanguard index funds in an IRA or a tax avoiding account or delaying account, or even, and maybe even more importantly, in a taxable account. So I looked at a couple of the funds that I have and that this listener sent in their email, and I noticed that all of these funds have incredibly low turnover. We're talking 3 to 5%. So that's going to limit the opportunity for gains, long-term, short-term, whatever, versus a fund that has 75% turnover. So if the fund, for whatever reason, decides a stock doesn't qualify for an index or even a managed fund and they want to sell some of it, it's very easy in a down year to find something else in the portfolio that is down or has long-term losses, which would just be over a year, and they could sell a little bit of something that's down a whole lot to offset any gains that exist, and therefore the net long-term gains to you in 22 would be zero. Other things with funds that turn over very, very little, the turnover could be caused by purchases, not selling and then buying something new, but purchases. either from cash that they had on hand or new funds coming in as more people realize how wonderful Vanguard funds are. If they're adding money at a rate greater than the money that's being taken out and greater than the turnover, that turnover could be fueled, or the turnover could be a result of investing the new inbound money, depending, and I don't know exactly how turnover is calculated within a fund, but that turnover could be from money coming in and buying things. So there's that. You could also have a fund that sells some things, has some turnover, and they sold something that they held less than a year. So you might have short-term gains and no long-term gains if the one or two things that they sold, they bought within 12 months, or they sold within 12 months of buying it. So there's that. And again, if more cash is coming in than going out, so more people are making deposits and fewer people are taking money out, to cover money going out, they don't have to sell stuff. So those are things that could likely be driving this. And I pulled up a bunch of the Vanguard funds that I own, and it is truly amazing. Virtually all of them. I think I had one. My session expired from Vanguard, which is good security protocol for a website. But when I had looked at it before I recorded the segment, I think I only had one fund that had recognized a long-term gain. And it's not that you're never going to have gains, but you can delay them year after year after year because they're long-term gains. You're not selling stuff. The index funds aren't selling much. It's, I guess, probably, I'll have to go look at old years, but this is probably a year where the long-term gains are lower for most people because the fund might have sold some things that were at losses to offset whatever were the gains. So those are my thoughts, my ideas at why you might have seen $0 in long-term gains definitely in index funds with low turnover and money coming in, but you might also see it be a smaller number than you might normally see it in a managed fund. And to tie in another request from an email that I had about tax loss harvesting. I don't talk about it a whole lot because it doesn't really fit my scheme, my plan of buying and holding and making very small, maybe sometimes moderate adjustments to the portfolio. And it's much harder to do tax loss harvesting with mutual funds. And it's even harder to do it with index funds. But what it usually refers to is someone who has a basket of stocks. And sometimes I have clients come to me, new clients that have a large portfolio, multiple millions of dollars. And in there, they might own individual stocks because they were buying or selling stocks, or their advisor was, or their broker was, before they learned about the value of index funds. If those stocks are owned in a taxable account, and for most people, most of their money is in IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, things like that. But if you have a bulk of money in a taxable account and you invest it in stocks, what can be done is called tax loss harvesting. So if you want to reduce your position in a stock that's gone up a lot, you can also reduce your holdings in a stock that's gone down a lot. And you could manage it sometimes to be that you have zero short-term and zero long-term gains by going in and very carefully picking which stock to sell, the number of shares to sell, and all that stuff. Now, one of the problem with index funds and investing in the long term, once you get past a bad year like 22, and hopefully 23 is not a bad year, but when you have 5, 10, 15 years of holding investments in mutual funds, there's not really anything you can do to sell to create a loss, which I think you should see as a wonderful thing. Now, individual stocks within that fund or the index fund might have gone down. And from time to time, for example, even if a company goes bankrupt, it goes to zero, the fund might have to sell that and recognize the loss and pass it on to you. You're not going to have any control over when that happens. It'll just show up. But then they could sell something that's up to offset it, so you don't see the internal actions. You just get the 1099 report after the end of the year so you can file your taxes. But that's just some thoughts and another more detailed explanation of why index funds are magic. It's buy and hold. It's buy low, it's sell high, it's dollar cost averaging, it's rebalancing, it's putting in money year after year, paycheck after paycheck, and hopefully not 10%, something like 15 to 20%, because 10% is probably not going to do it if you want to have more cash flow in retirement than you had while working, which is pretty fucking cool, I must say, as a concept. I think that's what we're all shooting for. Some people have exceptions to that, but not paying taxes every year on the gains in a managed fund and just holding the investments and having them roll over year after year after year, and the growth compounds on a higher dollar amount, and you only pay taxes later, whether that's inside of an IRA or a Roth, which is even better, or even in a taxable account, because you might not have any realized gains that year. You probably have some dividends, and most of those are going to be qualified dividends. Talked about that recently, where you're going to pay the lower long-term capital gains tax rates, even though the dividends aren't gains, they're dividends, and they're not long-term, they're short-term. But like I said before, kind of snarky. That's what rich people wanted, because that's how they make their money, and they want to pay lower taxes than you. So learn the rules, learn how the game works, and try to take advantage of low taxes, reducing taxes, delaying taxes, keeping your costs down. But anyway, that's just a little more follow-up on long-term capital gains and why they might have been zero, particularly for calendar year 2022.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
How you can justify wanting to take something away from people from 95 that gives meaning to 95% of the American people and replace it with something that gives meaning to just 5% of the American people?
Well, what an incredibly stupid question. First, I've said repeatedly that this stuff cannot be taken away from people. It is their favorite toy, and it will remain so. As Freud said in The Future of an Illusion, it will remain that way as long as we're afraid of death and have no problem, which is, I think, likely to be quite a long time. Second, I hope I've made it clear that I'm perfectly happy for people to have these toys and to play with them at home and hug them to themselves and so on, and share them with other people who come around and play with the toys. So that's absolutely fine. They are not to make me play with these toys. Okay? I will not play with the toys. Don't bring the toys to my house. Don't say my children must play with these toys. Don't say my toys might be a condom. Here we go again. Are not allowed by their toys. I'm not going to have any of that. Enough with clerical and religious bullying and intimidation. Is that finally clear? Have I got that across? Thank you.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Investments should be based on your personal situation, and you, of course, should consult with your financial advisor or tax professional before taking any actions. A great question from a listener. What about brokerage firms or mutual fund companies? What happens to my investments if they go broke or have financial trouble, like Silicon Valley Bank? I've talked about Silicon Valley Bank a little bit already. Of course, if there's things I've not answered, let me know. But with a brokerage firm or mutual fund company, just for the sake of argument, I'm going to talk about Fidelity. I'm just picking this name because people know it. It doesn't mean that I have any concerns or reason to be concerned about Fidelity. It doesn't mean that they're good. It doesn't mean that they're bad. I always say Vanguard. So today I'm going to say Fidelity. I'm just picking a name so I don't go a company and then you don't know what I mean. So I'm using Fidelity as a name, as a word, as a convenience for the conversation, for the segment. So don't read anything else into it. But let's say you have an account at Fidelity. So the kernel of this question was basically, should I have money my money in more than one place to protect it in case something happens. So first of all, in our modern system, there can be some improvements, and it's not completely wickedly and totally unrealistic to do something to protect yourself a little bit beyond what the system does. So a couple things come to mind. First of all, for the vast majority of people, if your bank collapses, you are protected by FIDC insurance up to $250,000 per person. So if you have a joint account or you each have an account or accounts at a bank, you're protected up to $500,000, $500,000. Many people, most people, almost all people don't have $500,000 or more sitting in their local bank. But, if you have more than that, if you happen to be that person that has $800,000 sitting around as cash in your bank, would it be reasonable to have some of that money in another bank? You know what? It might be reasonable. And not so much that I'm worried that you could lose any of the money, but you might lose access to the money. So what do I mean by that? So for example, let's say you and your spouse have $300,000 in a bank, and that bank has some serious financial difficulties. They might be a few days. I don't think longer than a week, but maybe a little bit. But the FDIC insurance, the government's going to step in and take over management of the bank. There could be a few days where everything is on hold, and if you show up and want to pull out $20,000, they're going to tell you no. So that could be a little bit of a problem. So if you had money somewhere else, an alternate bank, or like a brokerage firm, mutual fund company, somebody like Fidelity, where you could get money from them in that unlikely but potentially possible case where you could get money from another location, that might be nice. For example, I have a bank, but I also have some money in a credit union. So if the bank has a problem, I could go theoretically get to the credit union, and I have money at TD Ameritrade. I also have some money at Vanguard. So, I have options, but for a lot of people, it's totally unnecessary. But you could put a few thousand in another place that's not really making anything or doing anything, just in case. Fine. It's not something you really have to do, but if you want to do it, it doesn't kill me. It's not that hard. It doesn't really bother me that much. The other thing to keep in mind with any bank, and even in the case of Fidelity, which is just, again, the name I picked for this conversation, if a company goes bankrupt, it doesn't mean that they have $0. It often means they can't pay their bills. They can't make payroll. They can't meet all of the deduction demands. And even in Silicon Valley's bank situation, they could no longer meet the requirements of people pulling out cash, classic bank run, because they have loans outstanding. People owe them money. They might have building, property, locations, different things that can come in. They might be where their debts are greater than their assets, but they have things that they can sell, or they have ways to recover some of the assets. And a bank, just like a large brokerage firm or mutual fund company, someone could step in, another company, and take over. It could be where, this other organization takes on some of the debt. It could be that the federal government takes on some of the debt, which might be from the insurance fund, but it might be supplementary. There's all kinds of different ways where you get protected. Now, if you're over the $250,000 in your bank, and if you're over the $500,000 and again, Fidelity, your investments are probably covered by SIPC insurance. And of course, FIDC, I think I'm saying that right, and SIPC, you can go look these up and do more research at Investopedia or just on the Google to learn more about them. So your investments are protected at a higher level, $500,000. This does not in any way whatsoever protect you if the value of those investments goes down. So if you have $1 million invested in stocks, and stocks fall by 50%, your $1 million turns into $500,000, no one is going to come in and cover your ass. So make sure you understand what you're investing in. But if something goes wrong within that company, if something goes wrong within Fidelity, or Fidelity has financial troubles and they don't have enough liquidity to cover you, this other insurance can kick in and cover you. So again, most people, they're going to have portfolios under this or slightly over this. And then even if your portfolio is way over the 500,000, which is great for you, it doesn't mean it's gone. It just means that it may not be covered by the insurance. But again, with most investments like mutual funds and ETFs, and Fidelity is the same case. I'm confident, but if you know different, let me know. But when you give $1 million to Fidelity and you put it in the Fidelity Total Stock Market Index Fund, Fidelity may manage the money for you, but it's not their money. It's always in your name. The only way it could disappear and not be in your name is if someone fucking stole it, like talking, corporate espionage. But you know what I'm saying? They take the money and it disappears. Really big deal. But almost all mutual funds, index funds being a subset of mutual funds, and ETFs, that money is put into a trust, and that trust is set up and managed by a board, and it has certain rules and policies that the advisors and the investors and everybody that has to follow. And that money is separate, and in this case, separate from Fidelity. So if Fidelity went bankrupt, the mutual fund keeps on running. It's just no longer part of the Fidelity system if Fidelity collapses and goes to zero. So your money is still protected. Again, you may have some challenges in getting the money out right away. There might be an investigation, and probably some other brokerage firm or mutual fund managing company says, great, we want all these clients. We'll step in and apply our systems and our technologies, and we'll help all these people because they're going to become our customers now. So even in that case, if Fidelity just went poof and they have no money left, your money wasn't being held by Fidelity. It was inside this trust, invested in stocks and bonds. And so as long as it has your name on it, which is one of the reasons I don't like some of the apps, the investing apps, cool shit you can put on your phone. How do they hold the investments? Is it in your name? Is it in their name? Because some of them have really fun little clauses where they hold the money on your behalf and then they invest it for you, but they invest it in their name. If that company has financial trouble and they owe more than they have, whoever they owe money to can claim those assets because they belong to the company. With a qualified custodian, large brokerage firms, mutual fund companies, they don't do that. They don't use your money. They collect fees from you. They charge you to trade. They have commissions, all of this different stuff. They take that money, and that's how they pay their bills. Your portfolio is separate from that and can't be subject to collection for anyone that is owed money, again, in this case, by Fidelity. So the odds of you having a problem and your money disappearing that is in a bank or invested is really small. It's going to be very, very small percentage of the population that could even be at risk other than the accessibility of the funds. And that's the only reason why, if you have a bank, maybe having an account at a second bank in your town that has $10,000 in it, just in case you need $10,000 all of a sudden when your bank goes kaput, having quicker access to it might be kind of nice. But with a large, well-known brand name mutual fund company, brokerage firm, all of these that are qualified custodians, it's probably not going to be a problem. You don't need to limit yourself to $500,000 in this fund, in this company, and you don't have to put $500,000 in Fidelity, $500,000 in T. Rowe Price, $500,000 in Dodge and Cox, $500,000 in Vanguard. You don't need to do that. I think that's totally unnecessary. The odds that becomes a problem are really small, and the odds are there's all kinds of ways, including the SIPC insurance, that you're going to be covered. I think the most likely thing that could affect anybody would be there would be a short period of time where you might not have the liquidity and the access to move your money around if something weird happens. So I hope that helps provide some comfort to some people that that's not really a problem that you need to spend a lot of mental effort on. If it still bugs you, call the custodian and tell them that you would like to know more about what they are doing and what insurance they have and what coverages they have, because most of them, again, I didn't even mention this, will have insurance in addition to the SIPC insurance. But call them and ask them and say, hey, walk me through this. Tell me what protects me. And if you don't like the answers, move your money to somewhere else. But I don't think that's going to be necessary. Anyway, just a quick bit on what if your brokerage firm goes broke.
Behold the atheist's nightmare. Now, if you study a well-made banana, you'll find on the far side there are 3 ridges. On the close side, 2 ridges. If you get your hand ready to grip a banana, you'll find on the far side there are 3 grooves, on the close side 2 grooves. The banana and the hand are perfectly made one for the other. You'll find the maker of the banana, Almighty God, has made it with a non-slip surface. It has outward indicators of inward contents: green, too early; yellow, just right; black, too late. Now, if you go to the top of the banana, you'll find, as with the soda can makers, they placed a tab at the top. So God has placed a tab at the top. When you pull the tab, the contents don't squirt in your face. You'll find the wrapper, which is biodegradable, has perforations. Notice how gracefully it sits over the human hand. Notice it has a point at the top for ease of entry. It's just the right shape for the human mouth. It's chewy, easy to digest, and it's even curved toward the face to make the whole process so much easier.
You're listening to The Bill Ferguson Show.
Welcome back, everybody. And as promised, today our special guest is T. Rogers, and she works for Dignity Memorial. Did I get that right, T?
Yes, you did.
And let's see, you have a title here on the card, Pre-Planning Advisor. What does that mean?
So I am a funeral, cremation, and cemetery planning advisor. So let's just say you just got a new house. Do you shop for hurricane shutters and have them installed now, or when a storm is coming?
Well, probably now would be the time to do it if I was by the coast.
Probably now. So we do. We shop for them in advance. That is pre-planning. When a storm is coming, we simply pull out the shutters and work our plan. Make a plan, work the plan. Pre-planning is working with a funeral professional far in advance before you're ever going to need them, so that your family has that plan in place and doesn't have to do that in a time of crisis.
Yeah, because I know I've done this both ways. By the way, I don't know if we met, for everyone else to know, we met at Free Flow in Orlando just a few weeks ago. And I've done the show up at the funeral home and scramble to try to get everything picked out and ordered days in advance. It's a very stressful time and a very unfortunate time. And, you don't necessarily need the extra hassle, but you got to do what you got to do. But I've also had services that were planned out months and even years in advance, where we just made a phone call and then kind of everyone at the funeral home took care of the work. That's the kind of stuff you're talking about, right?
Absolutely.
And what kind of things can be pre-planned? I mean, a grave, a box, what tell me what are the options?
So all of the things, like anything that is going to have to be planned at the end, can be planned now. There's 100 or more decisions that are going to need to be made. And I have seen fistfights at a time of stress over whether mom would wear glasses in her casket. That, in a safe space like right now, that may not seem like it would happen, but if they know what you want, then there's no argument.
Yeah.
So, yes, you pre-plan every detail.
Well, it's funny. I wasn't even thinking of that, because for the good or ill, I'm not sure which it is, but all of the ones that I've been involved with, no one else wanted to be involved with the details, so I just did what I thought was best. But I could see in some families, different people are going to have different expectations, like you said, of what mom wants or what dad wants or whoever has passed away. And it can be very hard to decide every little detail, like you said. So if someone wanted to do that, pre-plan stuff, how does that work? Can they contact you? Are there other services? How does that work?
Sure. So, one of the advantages of pre-planning is that you get to pick your funeral professionals and decide what funeral home you're going to trust to take you into care and work with your family. So let's say someone chose me as their pre-planning advisor. They would simply get in touch with me and we would set up an appointment. Choosing how you want to be remembered and what your details are is very personal. If you want a simple plan, we'll make it simple. If you want the biggest party your city has ever seen, then we'll plan that. We can pre-design memorials, final resting place, cremation or traditional burial. I help people with veterans burial benefits. Whatever it is that need to be planned, your funeral professional can help you take care of that in advance.
Now, I'm a little confused, and this is probably my error, but it's good because the listeners can learn this at the same time. Your card has Dignity Memorial, but it also has Baldwin Fairchild Funeral Homes. What's the relationship between those two organizations?
Thanks for asking, Phil. That's a great question. So Dignity Memorial is our national brand. We have about 2,000 locations around the nation. But here in Central Florida, we have about 15 locations. We have funeral homes, 5 cemeteries, a crematory, and our care center. And locally, we are Baldwin Fairchild and some other brands. When a funeral home becomes a partner of Dignity Memorial, they don't lose their local staff and their local name and their local presence.
Fair enough. So someone could contact DignityMemorial.com or a phone number on there and get someone else. Are they going to be just as cool as you, or are they rolling the dice when they call and they should just call you?
Well, all of our funeral professionals are very highly trained. If somebody wants to call me, I, of course, would be honored to help. We all have things that set us apart and things that we do as pre-planning advisors. I have a background in diversity and inclusion, and so I do a lot of intentional work to help minority identities, LGBTQIA+, minority religious, and secular atheist identities with planning.
Nice. I mean, it's almost like you're a psychic here. You read my mind because I was going to go to that next. Are you telling me that because you specialize in that some other people, not necessarily anything to do with your organization, but a funeral home that's not related to the network, that could be a problem for people if they show up and say that they want a gay funeral, whatever that would mean, or they want this type of service or that type of service, that they might get rejected at the door? Does that happen?
That, unfortunately, I have heard stories from people of that happening. And minority identities do face challenges like that in death care. And, when you think about it, we face those challenges in other arenas, so they're not unexpected, but most people don't think about it happening in death care until it's too late.
Yeah. Now, is that, I know that's your specialty, but is Dignity Care all about that and they're cool, whatever you want kind of thing?
I am very proud to work for Dignity Memorial. They are a very inclusive provider. Of course, like any other industry, we're a large company. We have 25,000 employees. There are individuals with their own perspectives. So if someone, needed help having that conversation with someone, I could always serve as an advocate. Sure.
And if you don't mind, how can people reach you if they just want to know more? They have questions. Is a phone number the best? Is your email the best? What would you prefer?
I can be called. My cell phone number is 407-608-9242. You can catch me on LinkedIn. And of course, you can email me at t.rogers@dignitymemorial.com.
That is fantastic. And like I said, you and I talked at Free Flow, and I guess, like you just said, I didn't think about the possible problems because, at least not the things that you help cover. Because I know that we had one time where we were doing a funeral service for somebody, and we showed up at the service, and they were a member of a church, so we had their church leader, their minister, pastor, whatever, doing the service, and they spent 95% of the time talking about religion and only 5% talking about the person that we were all there to celebrate. And even some of the most religious people in attendance were offended by the fact that, hey, we all came for person X. I don't want to throw out any names because it's family, but they weren't there for a sermon. They weren't there to be belittled and told about a deity. And that's something that I'm assuming you can help them set up and find the right person in their local area.
Yeah, Phil, absolutely. And I'm so sorry to hear that happened, but I have heard that happening to multiple people. There's a resource called the Identity Affirming Death Care Directives, and you can find that at iaddresource.org. And that is intended to help people reflect on how their identity will inform their death care and give them tools to help loved ones follow through with those wishes. So, for example, what you just said, what kind of service do you want and what kind of language do you want used there? But also, for example, let's say for whatever reason you want someone other than your next of kin to be able to handle your final arrangements. Many people don't realize that power of attorney ends at the time of death, and the funeral home defers to the person that by law is next of kin. But you can have your lawyer draw up a control of disposition, and if it's for cremation, include authorization to receive ashes, and that will allow the funeral home to work with the person you trust to honor your wishes.
Oh, that's fantastic. What was that website again? I think that's important.
iaddresource.org.
Fantastic. Now, T, is there anything I didn't ask you about that you want to talk about, inform me, inform the listeners? Shameless plug here. Whatever you got. What do you think I should know?
I just think, especially for people of diverse identities, that one of the biggest advantages of pre-planning is that you have the opportunity to identify and work with a provider that affirms your identity, not just one that tolerates it because they're afraid of getting sued.
Wow. Well, really good way to put it. They're going to do it because they don't want to get sued, but they don't really want to.
Right. And, Phil, I know this is a finance show, and it is important that people save money when they pre-plan by locking in today's rates, but the emotional savings that we started talking about earlier is even more impactful.
Yeah, it's funny because
not having to deal with the crisis at the time of a crisis.
Yeah, just through my experiences, I wasn't really thinking about some of those things that could happen, and maybe I've been very lucky in the situations that I've been involved in. But I could see, like you said, a family where the person that has passed away identifies in a different way than everyone else in the family, whether that's sexual orientation, gender, religion, lack of religion. Having this all planned out in advance could really make it easy for the deceased loved one and everyone who's left, because it just kind of goes the way it goes. All right, everybody. Sorry. Weird little break here. I just had someone ring my doorbell, so I had to pause, and now I'm jumping back in. And of course, T is still here with me, and I apologize for that awkwardness, but we were talking about pre-planning and making sure people got their actual wishes and dignity, and kind of go with that theme and tell us some more.
Yeah, so communicating to a funeral home what a loved one's wishes can be really challenging. And your loved ones might not even know what those wishes are. So, for example, some people may not want their body blessed or prayed over, P-R-E-Y. And their family may not want a religious funeral professional forcing religious language on them, or a religion that isn't theirs. No one should be forced to pray to someone else's God in a time of grief. So if you walk into a funeral home that has crosses on the walls and Bibles in the lobby, and the funeral professional starts out with bless and pray language, P-R-E-Y, how comfortable are you going to feel telling them that you're an atheist, or that your daughter who just died is transgender and she would want to wear a dress in her casket? Or that you want to know the options for a natural burial, and then you're telling them that your Wiccan priestess will officiate the ceremony. you're wondering, is that sympathetic expression on their face going to change? I hear from people that they fear having to face uninformed funeral professionals, discrimination, being charged more, right? The non-Christian tax, because you're not getting the same deals that they might give to someone that agreed with them, or identity washing. If you're Jewish or an atheist or a Muslim and you go into a Christian-biased funeral home, where and how is your identity reflected? Your confidence might be really low that they can even accommodate your needs.
Wow. I mean, this is one of those topics where I thought I knew more than I guess I did. So I'm really, really delighted that you came on and explained some of this. And this is something that can really improve, I don't know, afterlife, but you get to be recognized and have the service that you want. And you can plan that all out in advance. And I think that's very, very important for yourself, if it's you, and for your family, so that they don't have to deal with the stress and anxiety of fighting with somebody over what's going to happen. Anything else that you want to throw in here and educate me and or the listeners?
No, Phil, I just want to really thank you for taking the time to talk about this and for being here in this space. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, everybody. Once again, T. Rogers, and she can be reached at t.rogers@dignitymemorial.com. And she will help you or direct you where you can go to find a caring individual that will help you, whether your memorial service, funeral service is traditional, by the book, Catholic, Christian, whatever, or if you want to do something a little different or a lot different. T, once again, thank you so much for being on the show. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to help us all out.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day, Phil.
Hi again. Yeah, Phil here. I just came back. T is gone. We finished the interview, but she did mention that she has experienced in the past some confusion because her name is T-E-E, 3 letters, not just the letter T. So if you put in the email TEE.Rogers, ROGERS, @dignitymemorial.com, you will successfully get through. And she asked me to say one more time, in case you want to call her cell phone, 407-608-9242. And she would be happy to help you pre-plan a service or put you in contact with someone that might be in your area to pre-plan a service. So hopefully this helps. Interview's over. All right, get on with your life, citizens. Thank you once again for listening to the show. I greatly appreciate it. I'm going to make the ending comments here pretty short because I've got to go pack my bags to go to the American Atheist Convention in Phoenix, Arizona this Easter weekend. If you're just finding out about it now, I'm assuming they have tickets left. I don't know if the hotel does or not, but you can check it out. Phoenix, Arizona, American Atheist 2023 Convention. And I expect to see maybe 100 or 200 friends of mine. And I expect the crowd to be much bigger, but I won't know everybody there. I'll just know a lot of people there, which is part of the fun. Still seems almost kind of weird, even though we've been mostly out of COVID for over a year, but things still get back to normal. And this convention, I think, is the one that was supposed to happen in 2020 in Phoenix. It got delayed by a year and then bumped and leapfrogged all the way out to 2023. So looking forward to that. If you are there and you see me or you see me at my table, you are invited to come up and say hello. I'd be happy to meet you or meet you again. And who knows, maybe we can sit down at lunch or dinner with a group of friends and have a really good time at the convention. So that's it. I'm just going to wrap up. I hope to see you out there somewhere in the world. Until then, ciao.
his wrath on his Son that day, so that we could be made clean. The Lord of all creation became a man to redeem. Satan is prowling like a roaring beast outside. Christ defeated him, heaven knows he lied. Daily I sin, just look at me, the wretched man I don't want to be. Must me with zeal, I want to grow. He'll help me grow, help me grow, help me grow. Seek his face and trust him more. Help me grow, help me grow. The 12th verse of Hebrews 4. I must care what his word has to say. Put the new man on. The old really bothered me anyway. It's awesome how my conscience helps me know right from wrong, and the Holy Spirit guides me. Let's praise the Lord in song. He lives in me, that this is true. Turn to Ephesians chapter 2. Was that not now his grace you see is free? Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Doesn't matter how hard you try. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. You will be with God when you die. All you do and all you say, do it all for He rose from death, and we will rise someday too. We can be justified, put faith in what he did for you. Though he braved, I was chosen before time and space. It is so amazing, God's grace, he took my place. Let them know, preach the gospel to everyone. Let them know, it is finished, Christ has won. In his hand is where you stand. When the world is gone. So stop, take a moment, thank God and pray.